Sly,
Yes.
do you know what band I equate most with when it comes to beating Melbourne on Queen's birthday?
Queen?
No, the Easy Beats.
Welcome to the Queen's birthday edition of the Collingwood Rant. I'm Sly.
And I'm the Queen's birthday spook.
Jeez, you fought long and deep for that one.
All of a second.
Last 3 weeks, you thought we'd be beaten by 10 goals, and last 3 weeks we've had amazing wins against quality opposition and Carlton.
You know it's a ploy that they're onto us. We know what we're doing.
Well, obviously Fly's showing this to the team, and they're just getting fired up.
Who do we play next week? Can we just skip to the end of the rant and say that we're going to lose by 10 goals?
Dubai.
Dubai. We're going to Dubai, everyone.
What did you think of this game? It looked ugly, or potentially ugly early on. We were wasteful in front of goal.
See, the funny thing is...
That is funny.
Wasteful in front of goal, and I messaged you at the time, was the only thing I thought that we were doing poorly. I thought we were playing pretty well and taking it up to them. We were dominating for passages in that first quarter and just couldn't convert, and some of those were easy misses. And I seriously hope this is something that we may start practicing at training at some point in the near future, this kicking for goal thing.
Yeah, it's actually surprising. I mean, I think some of it comes from the Celtic football and they're streaming forward and it's just shots out of anarchy. But there's really basic ones like Ginnivan missed a relatively easy snap and he missed a relatively easy set shot. So, I mean, there's definitely room for improvement. You look at that, you think, geez, you're making more work for yourself because you've got to run out games because it's close.
Yeah. And look, ultimately we won that one. But where I was coming from with that statement is that when you play good sides, I think it's important to make some form of mark early.
What about when you play Melbourne?
When you play everyone else except Melbourne, it's important to make a mark early. And I think when you have those misses, it can tip your, are we going to actually get one gear into going? And I think it can have a detrimental impact on your performance. But I think what they took away from that first quarter performance was enough self-belief to tackle quarter two like it was something new. And clearly that happened when we pulled within 5 points or something, I think at the main break.
Yeah, I mean, they said that in the 1990 grand final, doing all the dominating, we couldn't get a goal. Essendon went forward twice, Sam and Mark twice, they goaled. And I remember Dennis Banks just thinking, there's concerns, we just couldn't score. And then Dacos kicked that goal from the boundary and Brown said it was just relief. It was like, okay, hang on, okay, we're on. We've got this guy who can do that. So, I mean, you're right, you break that pressure. And, like, the more you miss, then the more that pressure builds. Mm. And that's where you really need somebody who you can rely on to just go back and nail them. Unfortunately, like, Ginnivan's generally been reliable, but he's been a little bit inaccurate lately. I don't know if it's from all the head knocks that he gets.
It's all the bending of the knees. It's cutting off the circulation to his head.
The big query of this team is, outside of the players who were injured for a little while yet, there's not a lot to come up from the VFL.
No, and I think it's no surprise that a lot of their return to form has come on the back of the side that's going out there each week. In order for us to keep continuing and being in a winning state of mind, it's going to rely a lot on no injuries.
I mean, I think the other thing too is you look at, like, I was thinking about this in comparison to the 2018 side, which lost the grand final.
Did they?
Yeah. And in your 2019 side, who, lost the prelim.
Well, you had to turn up to have lost that one.
Yeah. Did we turn up to that game?
We turned up for a quarter.
But I was just going to say that I was looking at those sides comparatively, and I was thinking, what have we lost from each of those sides and what have we gained? And
there's $1 million question here, isn't there?
No, I'm not talking about Grundy. I was actually just looking at, like, from the point of view of Henry's really stepped up and playing a key forward role where even if he's not getting goals, but he's getting goals at vital times, he's linchpinning that forward line so it functions. The big surprise for me is Nathan Murphy.
Oh, he's really, really looking good.
Yeah. And when Roughhead went out and then Magden went out and Dean never got in, you're thinking, who are they? And Will Kelly was injured, you're thinking, who comes in here? And I was like, Nathan Murphy's okay, well, he's
been there, done that 28 times, and look what happened, he broke.
Yeah, but he's been really, really good, so he's held that spot. And in terms of now Grundy going out, you have Darcy Cameron and Mason Cox in that ruck role.
And performing way better.
And the thing is, like, you can't really have a lot of drop-off in this team because it'll fall away really quickly. And if you have another injury or two, then it's going to be exposed. You probably got that Josh Carmichael to come in. Potentially Callum Brown. Tyler Brown played medical sub again. But it can fall away really, really quickly. And I think in that 3-game losing streak from memory, Elliott missed with that shoulder injury because of the non-dangerous tackle.
He came back for the Carlton game, was it?
Yeah, but that 3-game loss we had in the middle, I think Pendlebury missed one. I think McCreary was out. We're talking about, you look at the way he ping-pongs around. You know, the pressure he applies. So it doesn't take a lot for this side to come back under the pack. And it really takes guys having really good games. I mean, Nick Dacus, another 30-possession game. The big American.
Oh, how good was he?
I mean, we've been saying he's a ruckman. He's playing as ruck. He's dominating. He gets to run freely at the ball. I mean, the two things I love about Mason Cox are, one, after he takes a couple of marks, you made at the point that he gets confidence in himself, but he has this really big physical presence then. Like, you can just feel the whole crowd lift like he's going to pounce on it. Yeah. And Grundy doesn't have that.
No. Could you imagine Grundy today dropping back and how many, like, Cox was destroying them in defence.
Yeah.
He was pulling them down everything and saved a number of goals. You just don't see Grundy doing that.
No. And
occasionally he'll do it, but not...
Well, that's been the complaint we've had. He doesn't do those ruck things of taking that big mark forward, taking that big mark in defence or whatever. That's not really his thing. I mean, he'll take the occasional one, but it's not something, you think he's going to come away 9-10 good marks. And the other thing in the actual ruck, I noticed, like, when he was against Gawn might have been carrying a bit of an injury after a knock, but because of Cox's height, he was able to sort of nullify and actually impact Gawn's ability to get taps to advantage. I mean, that's a novel concept, taps to advantage.
Who would have thought?
But there was a few times, which are what we've been urging Grundy to do for years, is a few times Cox just went, I'm just going to thump it.
Yeah, I talked about that one with you earlier, but the crucial moment at the in the last quarter where there's a ball up on Melbourne's 450, and instead of tapping to the feet of the opposition like he who shall remain nameless would have probably done, he thumped the ball forward, and not only thumped the ball, it travelled halfway up the wing.
Yeah.
It skidded through two groups, and we managed to get it clear. And you think, that's exactly why sometimes you take that as a tactic. You get it out of scoring range for a start, and you've had a couple of contests there that you've got at least a 50-50 chance then of winning the ball.
And you break apart their defensive zones, so they've been setting up to potentially rove it or take it from their ruckman, and now it's all redundant, and it becomes this 50-50 as it rolls forward, and everyone's running forward, and you're gaining territory also. So even if it gets locked up, you're 25 metres better off. We've been telling Grundy to do this for ages. And somehow we're not on the coaching staff.
There's one thing I think when it comes to all sports, and that's you get only so far on natural ability and stuff as a player, but when you start thinking through the game and you start thinking tactically, what do I do? It's like Elliott's punch on, the awareness that's there. It's like a lot of the times, like I'm in awe of Nick Dacos's awareness that he knows when he's got someone around him when he's running for the ball. He's already made that call about what's my options here before he's even got to the ball. And you're starting to see a lot of that develop in Fly's side, that you're seeing them think through the game rather than just reacting to the game. And I think that's a great trait that they're developing.
I mean, I think great players should have that anyway. I mean, the great players always adapt to whatever's happening, and then if they're getting beaten or negated, it's like, well, how do I get around this? I don't know what you call them, but players who just go, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing until it works for me. There's not a lot of logic in that, So that
logic,
well, that ruck thing, that's frustrating me. I've been urging Grundy just punt, do something different. I don't care what it is, running from the side, whatever, just change it up. Coxie was doing that. He was actually sort of changing the way he was doing things. There's times he sort of seemed to be running into Gawn just to go, you're going to feel my body, and it's going to nullify the extent of your influence on the tap and all that sort of stuff. I mean, Gawn is... he'd be one of my favourite non-Collingwood players in terms of really good leader, really good player, and just really good thinker through the game. But Coxie took it to him. I mean, the one issue I think is with Coxie, Grundy, and Cameron. We said it the other week, is they're all ruckmen, and I think there's been a couple of games where Cox has rucked predominantly, and there's games where Cameron's rucked predominantly, and they've looked good when they've rucked predominantly. So it's like, what do they do when Grundy comes back? I mean, what do you think the option is?
I think the option I think the option is to keep Grundy as a backup ruckman and play him in the VFL.
Do you think we should retain Tonya Harding?
She might come in handy.
No.
When was he due back, Grundy? It's late in the season.
I think he's probably ringing his manager saying, I'm fit to go next week. And his manager's going, we've got to buy, and he's going, good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it was sort of one of these speculative ones, so it's really just how his recovery goes. But, you know, I don't know. What do they do? I actually recall about 10 years ago, probably even longer, where Josh Fraser was injured, and we had Chris Bryan and Gary Richards doing the ruck. And we're actually doing really well. And then when we brought Fraser back, it just sort of disrupted the chemistry.
Yeah, it worries me now if we bring Grundy back about what are we going to disrupt. Look, I don't think we're a contender or anything this year, but I'm liking what I see, and I'm hesitant to change too much around it at the moment. Now, naturally, attrition or probably knockout.
All three ruckmen at once.
Probably all three of them. They'll be speared on a point post or something. But yeah, it does concern me that, you know, what beautiful thing we're developing here could be unbalanced.
I think the reality is if they do bring Grundy in, it's
unbalanced, or is it imbalanced?
Imbalanced.
Unbalanced. That's impossible.
Yeah. If Grundy is fit this year and they bring him back, I think they actually sort of say, well, you know what, we're going to try in a few different roles because we're going to leave.
Where do you play him though? You can't have all three out there.
I know you can't.
And the other two are there on merit at the moment.
I mean, I've been Cox's champion for ages. I've been saying just play him in the ruck. We'll see him in the ruck, and you see. And when he gets that free run at it, he looks really different. I mean, the thing killing me in that first quarter, he was playing up forward. There's several free kicks that were most obviously there. There was one where he was dragged just totally off the ball from the contest. Another one where he was blocked. Doesn't get him. Moves up the ground. He starts getting a few free kicks. But once he's not being blocked and impinged and cheated illegally, and he's allowed to run, and then, you know, it's harder to do that when you're in open space. He's allowed to run at the ball, and he can provide a contest.
Oh, he did. And I think once he was pulled out of that forward line, he functioned a lot better.
And as you pointed out, I mean, in some of those contests, he ran from, like, one end of the ground to the other, and you're just sort of going, geez, he's covered a lot of distance.
His mobility is extremely good. Yeah, as I said, I mean, that prime example was when he intercepted that knock-on from Mio and handballed over to Elliott.
Yeah.
He was involved in a contest halfway up the ground, not that much longer, and he just kept going.
Yeah,
that's great awareness. I mean, there's plenty of space there, and it was exactly the right thing to do. But you wouldn't have gone up there thinking I'd be involved in much from here. But as it turned out, yes, you're a crucial cog in that passage.
Look, the other thing I really like about Cox, even when he's been average as a forward, when he's been dropping marks, I mean, look, some of that's his fault, some of it's just delivery. You look at the way we move the ball forward at times, it just murders anyone. But he's not a sort of guy who just says, I'm going to go for the mark every single time. It's like, if I'm out of position, I'm just going to go for a tap here. All I'm doing is trying to spoil it. He adapts really quickly to whatever the situation is, and if he can get a run at it, he'll go for a mark. If he can't, he'll just try and get the hand in, try and direct the ball to a teammate or something. So he's really innovative and thinks quickly on his feet, which is great, which is more like I say than someone else. Pendlebury was sent forward from the start of the game. I don't know if he was just... A few times he looked really slow. Later on he started to show a bit of... I don't want to say composure, but like he showed, a bit of poise, a bit of that typical Pendlebury poise. Sidebottom's the other one who sort of started statistically well, although his opponent was just getting the ball also. And then he was moved and sort of seemed to disappear from the game.
Yeah, he ended up with about 10 odd possessions.
Yep.
But what was his role? I don't. Maybe he was fulfilling it after that move. Was he quelling anyone or just hanging around?
Well, Adams has moved to Oliver after Oliver ran amok on the goey, and Adams seemed to take a lot of his influence out.
Yeah, I think Oliver after the first quarter really tapered off.
I
don't know how he won the Neil Danaher Trophy, which I didn't know existed up until today.
Taylor Adams is really good.
Yeah, he was.
Fanatically defensive. He tends to bite off a little bit more than he can chew with some of his disposal attempts, or his belief that this is what I'm going to go for. Henry has done well to sort of hold that spot. What do you think about the two small forwards? I mean, Ginnivan's been quieter.
Yeah, I think Ginnivan, he's only played, 12, 13 games or something. He's going to have those quiet moments. But he's still a thorn in people's sides. There was that incident and when Gawn was coming off the ground and he was gobbing off to our bench.
Yeah.
And I think you said you heard that it was Ginnivan that...
he was going after Ginnivan. And the thing too is, Petrarca nearly ripped off Ginnivan's head. it was an obvious free. I mean, Ginnivan was still fully upright when he got his head ripped off, and then Petrarca was going after Ginnivan, like, and you fucking ducked and all that. What do you think?
He didn't duck though on that one. It was blatantly a high tackle.
I mean, Tim Watson still alluded to him drawing the free, which is just absurd. I mean,
didn't someone say, it started low and ended up being high? Well, what fucking difference does it make? What the end result becomes is what the free kick is paid for.
Well, it's that. I mean, we'll go into commentators in a minute, but I mean, what do you think of the Melbourne targeting Ginnivan?
That's what I say. I love the fact that he gets under people's skins, even when he's not actively doing a lot in the game. He's still doing a lot in the game by annoying people, and the focus is on they just now become obsessed with potentially trying to stop him or quell him when he's not being particularly damaging. I think it's just great to have around to annoy people. If that's going to be his thing for a while, I'm happy with it.
Well, look, you know me. I don't like to criticise other clubs, but what sort of shit club must you be to say he's going to be the focus of our aggression?
Good on him
to target Ginnivan.
More of that.
You think you go after De Goey or Adams as being like a instigator of the play and all that sort of stuff. I thought that was piss weak. And I thought what Petrarca did was absolutely piss weak, and none of the commentators called it out. I thought what Gawn did was piss weak. For him to walk off and shout at Ginnivan is really piss weak. It's actually annoying me now that the commentator... They've created this narrative around Ginnivan that like he deserves to be bullied or whacked or attacked verbally or whatever. And it's fucking ridiculous because he's not doing anything other than playing. No. There was numerous times I saw Melbourne players ducked ahead, like Spargo drew a free on the wing, and they actually said, I think Cameron Ling, that Rhodes scholar, said, dropped ahead and drew the free. It's like, well, hang on. If it was Ginnivan, you'd go on for 10 minutes about it. He does it, and it's just like a matter of fact. Who cares? It's really... I find it really wrong, and people talk about, the way certain players are treated. It's like, this is now going into a strata of... This is not actually right, the way he's being treated.
No, it's not. But at the same time, though, it works for us. It takes the attention away from other players, and they become obsessed with him almost. I hope it stays that way. You mentioned De Goey before. I thought he was brilliant today. I think he was clearly better than Petrarca. If we're going all that comparison thing, but he should have been getting more attention than Ginnivan was getting at times for being damaging. Works beautifully. Keep it going.
Oh, look, he
should just come out there flipping the bird.
Look, it just staggers me. So McCreery, he's been getting a bit more of the ball lately. I love the way he ping-pongs around. I think Henry's got to look at him at times and just go, that's what I need to do to chase. Because there's contests where McCreery was starting on one end of the ground, ending up on the other end of the ground because he was just running around to provide pressure. There's times when he can't get to the player or the player moves past him and he just applies body contact on someone else. It's like, you're going to know I'm out here. It's really, I really love watching him play. If they could get 22 players like him in terms of their defensive physicality, it would be awesome because he's just a beast in that regard.
He creates a lot of pressure for players. I mean, there's a couple of times I thought he probably should have gone the ball instead of the man. That looked the more viable option, but I love his hard-headed attitude. Although Henry, what I love about Henry is he's about the only bloke who actually looks for space and leads into it.
Yeah.
There was that great passage of play that we ran it up, and Hoskerman was involved. It was a great kick, but it was just perfectly weighted to where he was leading to, and you're thinking, if only you could do more of that.
Oh, well, that'll probably come a time.
Yeah.
I mean, they both need to learn from each other because Henry's a really good, playmaker. He runs to the ball. McCreery really runs to the man. But there's a few times like I was watching Henry chase and it was just like, well, I've taken 5 steps after you and you're 1 foot in front of me. I'm not going to do anymore.
There's some element, though, of the McCreery game that you think, the fact that he attacks the player, you start to wonder whether he'd develop a bit of a reputation for hurting if he hits you.
Yep. And
that then takes to, players can see that he's coming, opposition players. It can make him a bit edgy. Sort of presence that, blokes like Mullane and Malloy used to have for us that, when they were around, blokes look for shadows.
Yep.
And I don't mind if that's what they're building there with McCreery too, because he's a bit of a ball player. Yeah, and look at what you said too. He's reasonably lithe, but if he builds up some muscle, he could hurt.
Yeah. Huskin Elliott.
I can't believe you bag him each week.
I bag us.
No, look, he was good today when it mattered.
Oh, look, in all that 22. So I mean, there's only a couple of like side bottom that who I thought had quieter games. Jack Crisp was another one who was really good. I thought Cameron wasn't as
he had presence, though.
but he was good when he, I mean, Quayne is sort of the one we probably don't talk about enough anymore. He's generally pretty good around halfback. Noble started quietly, but then worked his way into the game. So it was really sort of encouraging because there's times where you looked and thought this could just get ugly. And it could just become one of these things where they're 4 goals up and we pull it down to 2 goals and they get another 2. They get back to 4 goals up.
Yeah. I think the key thing out of everything today, it's a classic. If this was in the newspaper tomorrow, it'd be a team effort in terms of how everyone played their role. And that's what you've got to do when you want to beat sides like this.
Are you surprised by their last 3 weeks and particularly their year?
Incredibly surprised. I kept saying, I think each week, that I think this is a test. But like today was the true benchmark test about where we're at. You're going to find a lot about when you play the Premier about where you're at, and they're at way ahead of where I thought they'd be after the years we had. And I think it's really telling now that the influence that the like Fly and the other coaching staff, whatever it is they were working on, is starting to really manifest. In terms of like today, I thought for the first time in ages they looked a far better side when they were with their manic forward runs than playing it safe. You know how we always did that chipping around stuff?
Yeah.
It was actually when we reverted back to that a little bit today for a passage, I think it was in the second, we looked really hesitant. Yeah. We were far better just taking the game on and driving that ball forward and being creative.
Yeah, I think the thing that surprised me is the fluency has really developed with their run. There's still some hospital handballs and passes and shit at times, but they just, once they get moving, they just seem relentless in continuing to move forward, whereas earlier in the year they were really just a lot of skill errors. They were trying to get things happening and to be undone by skill problems and that sort of stuff. This is one game where it just felt like, besides that, for a period, I think in about the second quarter, Melbourne just attacked and we were just weathering it and we couldn't get anything going because we were just constantly under the defense. It just felt like, shit, this is almost... I don't want to call it a training drill because obviously there's no football team out there, but it was like drills they were running that were just overlapping runners, moving forward, and just regardless of what was coming at them, they just kept moving the ball forward, kept going forward, and kept finding opportunities. I mean, the biggest problem I think is just when they go inside 50, they have to occasionally just lower the eyes and go, let me look for a pass rather than just a manic bomb. Because, I mean, that, what's his name, Brayshaw, they picked him out about 98 times at one point. And that was like the sort of stuff we complain about with McGovern and that. It's just, they keep picking that out. Just look for a little bit.
Yeah, Brayshaw kept them in the game.
Yeah. Oh, apparently Oliver must have, because he won a trophy. What do you think Nathan Buckley would be thinking when he's watching this?
Well, hopefully a sense of pride. I think you'd also have to look at yourself in the mirror a little bit, wouldn't you? He no, get into a bagging thing about him. But he had an interview that I listened to the other day on SCN, I think it was, where he was talking about they tried to implement a similar strategy last year, and then he ticked off all the things that went wrong with it, and then an afterthought was, and the coaching panel. And I think that sums up the problem with your tenure is that you never sort of looked at yourself hard enough to think, am I the problem here?
Well, go to Fremantle. So Fremantle, I think, is second at the moment. Longmuir's being called the coach of the year. They're saying he breaks down the raw figures like nobody else. Fremantle looks really good. We know Longmuir played a big part in 2018's, unexpected turnaround.
All the players said as much too after he left.
Nobody expected us to have that turnaround that we did in 2018 from 2017 where we were coming from. I mean, one of the problems with Buckley would seem that he just had the same people around him, the same ideas, and nothing ever changed. And whatever they tried to change was still coming from the same think box.
Do you reckon? I heard that it was only last week Harvey's still parking his car at the Lexus Centre.
Well, you saw what Harvey tried to do in his caretaker role, so I don't think he really seemed to be the problem there. I look at... So this is the thing that frustrates me. You look at what McRae is doing now, and I still think it's very easy to unravel. You get a couple of injuries and...
Yeah, that's the concern, yeah.
And, you're having guys like Bianco and, Callum Brown coming in, and either it's too early for them or they'll struggle with the pressure, whatever the case. If you had this sort of ideology 3-4 years ago, what could you have done when you had like a more senior team and you had guys like Trelaw and Stevenson before he really dropped his bundle. And all these other guys like Hoskinelli when he was doing well. What could you have done then if you weren't playing? I mean, we were saying it in 2019 going, why have they slowed it down to this extent? What's going on? If they were just playing this all-out attack, and Richmond was doing that same thing at that time, so that was a strategy that was working, what could they have done? And we saw actually in times like the 2019 prelim, for 3 quarters they played this shit, stodgy football, and for 15 minutes the last quarter they played this attacking football and they dominated. They obviously had the capacity to prosper from it, but they never actually did it.
And that was always the big mystery that we talked about for the whole year, was why they turned their back on everything that worked the previous year.
Yeah,
it was baffling to watch.
So it actually feels...
And I think it comes back to that stodgy belief that your structures is all that matters in the game, and clearly it's not. I think that wild attacking style served as well. We talked about it the whole of 18. You had the most unpredictable forward line in the competition, and it just kept bobbing up and scoring. Everyone had their crack at different times. It was a great sort of thing to watch.
Oh, but they moved the ball really quickly too. They played with daring and verve, which just slowly disintegrated over the next year. And so it actually frustrates me that you probably had the personnel at that time to potentially win a grand final, and you played this shit football. And now I still think we're punching above our weight because you're bringing the kids in.
It's some impressive punching though.
It's great punching, but it's one of these things they really need a lot of those guys to fire at their maximum capacity.
Yeah.
You just had someone drop off a little bit. I mean, today I thought the real driver initially was that Taylor Adams. Taylor Adams he threw himself at everything. His tackling was manic. It was amazing. So he really set the tempo early. You take Adams out of the game, you quiet the goey, and then suddenly it's just open season, where it's just going to unravel. And it's like, I think, if everything absolutely went right, they could win a flag. But that requires so many things to fall into place. I mean, you just need Pendlebury to sort of drop off a little bit more. You need if Mychek got injured, for example, that forward line's really just going to unravel quickly. So a few years ago when they had the personnel there that could have probably carried a few of these injuries, would have been interesting if they played this manic football. Now it's really nice to watch, but it's in this weird juxtaposition of you got the guys there right now. If any of them go, that's going to fall apart probably, and in the future, some of them are going to retire. So what's it going to look like?
But that's the thing. I mean, this is all part of the rebuilding phase. So you're having a greater year than we all thought they were going to have, but you're also going to find out a lot about the players that aren't coming on the journey for the next step. And I think you're going to have another year of finding out who's belonging before we get really competitive again. So year 3 could be the year. I've had it on good authority that the third year's the year in which we deliver all sorts of tableware.
Well, that'll be interesting. Maybe something can hold some chips for us. It'll be interesting. I think the list is in this weird place. I mean, if they pick up some players, great. But is Pendlebury going to be there in 2 more years?
No, but you're going to have to find some replacements for those players.
But the Pendlebury ones, like you can replace, for example, I don't know, you can replace, Adam Treloar potentially. I mean, I still think we're obviously going to be a better side with him in it. Pendlebury is like that once-in-a-generation player. It's like when Hawthorn ditched Sam Mitchell and Luke Hodgson, they brought in Tom Mitchell and Jaeger O'Meara, and it's like, but that's Luke Hodgson and Sam Mitchell. They're not just guys you can just replace like that. So Collingwood was lucky when you go back to 06, 07, and Buckley and Burns were going out, and they found Pendlebury and Thomas and Swan and all that. They actually found guys either just as good or good, but just in different ways. So in 2 years, what's that club going to look like without, I don't know, I mean, Pendlebury, Sidebottom, Howe, potentially, and some of those other guys who are 28, like Adams and all that.
I think...
Where are they going to be? Mychek's about 28 already also.
The saving grace for us should be that then that you've moved on Buckley and you've moved on Eddie, I think as a place of destination, we should become attractive again. And I'm saying it's those two fold, but...
So you're saying it's those two?
I think it's those two were at fold.
Well,
but I think the thing is, from externally now, the perception around Collingwood is changing around it's a place that could attract players. So you may have people putting their hands up to say, I'd like to come and play here. And these are the senior players that may come in and fill these roles. I mean, I wouldn't be looking at anyone over the age of 29 or anything stupid like that anymore. But if you can get a couple of sweet mids or anything around that 25 age bracket that are established players to come to us, we can sort those issues pretty well.
Would you go after Taranto from GWS?
I think I'd be interested.
And you talk about like sort of being a destination, and then you throw in Nathan Buckley and Eddie Maguire's name, and it didn't seem that attractive a destination. I mean, there was another factor in there too. They were paying 146% of the salary cap. So I don't know if they could have fit anyone else in.
Well, and that's the problem. I mean, look, by all accounts, if that's sorted now,
I heard was the Collingwood account said that Trelaw will pay you $1 every year for the next 900,000 years.
Yes, we've opened a bank account for you.
Yeah,
and we're going to deposit 50 cents a week in there because you're a good boy. Look, I think then you get back into the draft. If we trade Grundy for 3 first-round picks, I think we're laughing. And someone will pick up that salary, so that won't be a problem. But, look, it may well be that we have to give something away at value. And, look, you've got to play a long game with this stuff to a certain extent.
So, to go, stay or go?
Look, I've talked about him being a potential trade thing that they would look at. I'm not so sure after his last couple of weeks. I think he's really proving to be a cog.
If you can look at the go, he just...
Like, he's always going to be a cog, but I think I'd be way happy if he stayed.
He's just a physical beast. I mean, he sees players coming at him and he just tries to run through them. It's like, you got to hold me. I mean, I haven't seen that since Mullane at Collingwood. Mullane had sort of more of that frightening presence that I could hurt you. But the Goey has that physicality where it's like, I'm a big guy. It's going to take a bit for you to tackle me. I'm putting it on you. Umpiring, what do you think?
Shithouse.
Really?
I don't know what it is with the
Queen's birthday.
It is just it's a frustrating game.
It's a day of giving, though.
To Melbourne. Clearly they give it to Melbourne a lot. No, I thought some of the umpiring was baffling at times. The one that really fucking irked me was Elliot. There was that out in the full, and Elliot went to take the kick.
Yeah.
And the fucking the umpire's going, no, more to the left. He's going, mate, if I'm any more on the left, I'm kicking it from the fucking chick stunnies out the back here. And, like, I think the commentators pointed out rightly that there's nothing stopping you from running the length of the fucking ground on the outside to kick that ball in. And they wouldn't let him do it. They kept hamming him in. And you go, why? You don't normally do this sort of shit. Now, and the other one with the Henry mark, he got clipped in the back of the head. I mean, that should be a 50. Any contact after a mark is clearly taken should result in some sort of penalty. But it was, that's fine. It was just baffling moments about why do you choose not to see some of these things.
The one that really pissed me off was when Sidebottom was tackled and he allowed himself to be taken over the boundary and was holding the ball.
Oh, yeah, well, how often they pay that? And how many times did that happen in the game normally?
Yeah.
And it's just out of bounds. They've deliberately taken the ball over.
I mean, the thing with Sidebottom there, he just looked at like, I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm being carried over. So why should I pretend I'm trying to get rid of it? It just really shits me. That's the thing that's come in. It's that whole... didn't make a genuine attempt. So even if you can't get it out, you've got to be seen to mimicking a free, to mimicking getting rid of it, otherwise it's a free. It's fucking ridiculous. There's a real lot of shit frees. There was times Melbourne players ducked, the commentators made no comment of that. That last one that Crisp kicked, that goal, and Ginnivan took out the Melbourne player in the line. I mean, it's been established in all these years of football. You can basically just decapitate someone on the line as a shepherd, and it's fine. But that was the one where they sort of go, well, maybe... that should have been the free. And they went on about it for a little while. And that brings me to the next point, is the commentators.
Channel 7 has the most appalling list of commentators going in anything. If you flick between what's been spoken about on Channel 7 and then go to Fox Footy, you get a fucking rational, level-headed approach by blokes who play and understand the game. Seven's commentary is all about theatrics more than anything.
Well, Hamish McLaughlin always brings in those fucking colourful analogies. I mean, and he says some stupid things. I mean, there was one where Mychek went for the ball, was on the ground, he bent over to pick it up, and then he headbutted the Melbourne player, and McLaughlin said, Mychek drops the head. Well, how else do you want him to fucking pick up the ball? Should he crouch? Should he scoop it up on his foot and kick? This thing that they sort of start commenting, they've dropped the head. Maybe sometimes it's because the ball's on the ground, they have to bend over to pick it up. Brian Taylor, I don't know why the fuck you have an issue with Collingwood. You really come across as this Collingwood-hating fucking dickhead. And it just goes on and on. You played for Collingwood, you kicked 100 goals, you were a fan favourite at the fucking time, you hosted Collingwood functions, and yet we've got to hear all the constant jibes about Collingwood. Wow-wee.
Do you know what the amazing one was? Is when, I think it was the first quarter where Ginnivan threw the ball back at Oliver and missed him. And fucking Taylor's banging on about he's an elite ball user. Yeah. He should be able to throw the ball back. And you're thinking, well, how many fucking times do they practice throwing the ball at someone at training?
But even like
what's that got to do with being an elite footballer?
But he's an elite footballer. He should. What about all elite footballers who miss passes by foot, passes by hand, miss the goals from straight out in front? They're all elite. Why are they missing those?
The important one is they're acceptable, but you just can't throw the ball back wrong.
Yeah, and it was about 2 feet to the fucking Melbourne player's left. All he had to do was reach out and grab it, but he tried to milk it. I mean, it wasn't a great throw. It wasn't that terrible, though.
Yeah.
And the other one is Cameron Ling. I mean, he's always hated Collingwood. Here's a funny one also to be going on about, like, when Elliott and, who was that, Turner from Melbourne, they ran into each other and knocked each other out briefly.
Oh, yeah.
And the Melbourne player went off to get tested for concussion. And for about the next 3 minutes, the commentators made a case that Elliott also has to go off. And Ling's going, you should do it, you got to be safe. And this is from the guy who punched Nathan Buckley in the face to draw blood, to get him sent off with the blood rule. He's concerned about your well-being. Well done, Cameron. Fucking hell, seriously.
It's still howdy doody time.
Oh, fucking... Eric Stoltz played him in the movie, didn't he? I really just listen to these people, and I seriously just want to get out there and maim.
Oh, that's it. Like, I watched the game on KO, and you get that cut off at the breaks where they go to King and a few others. And their analysis in that short 10-minute space is way more informative than anything you get out of the dribble that Seven pump into the commentary. It is pathetic. They're not calling a game. They're just fucking grandstanding it. You know, Seven, pull your finger out of your clacker.
And that was all started by Dennis Cometti, who had all the sort of the metaphors.
Yeah.
And then he used to come up with a list and he tried to work them in. And then it was like he's working them in whether it's related to the play or not. And everyone wants to be fucking an entertainer. And they're terrible. I mean, I was reading a thing about David King, like they were asking him, should North Melbourne get a concession because they're terrible? And he's going, no, not yet, because they were the author of their own demise. Why should? And it's like, this is a guy who's a legend at that club. You listen to him give an impartial opinion, and then you listen to these dickheads just barrack for the opposition.
Oh, yeah. And Triple M it's a breeding ground for them too. If you listen to Triple M commentary, it's 4 hours of these blokes talking about themselves, and occasionally they remember there's a game of football out there.
Oh, it's fucking horrible.
It's not entertaining. And that's the screaming and the gibberish and stuff. Like, you know, it can be amusing when it's part of a pre-show type of thing, but when you're calling the game, it's just not good enough.
But I think the thing that really, go back to Ginnivan, it's like, it's not your job to keep telling us something that's not actually true. When you go back to the game where Ginnivan didn't get free kicks, and then the AFL actually came out and said, yes, there were free kicks there. It's like, okay, so then he's not acting, and yet they're still championing this. I mean, Daisy Pearce also came out going, oh, he's acting. And you're talking about, like, Gary Lyons coming out. No one's talking about the fact that fucking a Melbourne Premiership player got his head knocked off by a teammate. That's not the big story. It's still Ginnivan fucking apparently ducking. It shows you how the media pushed the narrative where they wanted to go.
Yeah, but it's that classic thing about us selling papers. We are more interesting to talk about no matter what.
But we're more interested to talk about if we're Collingwood.
Well, that's the thing.
I would have thought the big story was what's happening at Melbourne. 2 losses, and there's an altercation.
But again, at the end of the game, KO cut straight to on the couch, and the first 10 minutes of that, they dissected the game about how awesome Collingwood were, and how disappointing Melbourne were, and you know it's now 3 on the ropes, and you know they're looking a little bit shaky at the moment for whatever reason. But that's analysis. That's informative stuff.
But look at the stories. Ginnivan might duck. Selwood's done it for 300 games. Melksham punches out May. And apparently Melsham's come to the rescue of another teammate that May was getting stuck into. May's drinking when he's on concussion watch. Melksham injures his hand, so he has to miss a week or whatever it is. There's so much shit going on there. And it's like, but let's talk about the guy who might duck.
I think people should be talking more about what a basket case Melbourne is.
Look,
I think we talked about it before. They're the sort of club that has a history of destabilising their mental approach to things. They're a very weak-minded club.
So we should disband them.
if they don't win it this year, they'll never win another one with that side.
No.
They'll fall apart pretty quick. And I'd be happy to see that.
Yeah.
I think they probably still should win. But it's going to be a bit of a testing time for them to see whether they can pull themselves out of this slump, which is just a baffling slump, really. They've got no injuries or anything. They've got a couple of... May's a big loss. Do you think May would have been the difference today, though?
I think the thing with May, though, is when he comes back and he's had that altercation with Melksham, it's like, do we just welcome him back? Is everything okay? Or is there now an issue in the playing group?
Well, that could be it. It's an odd thing to have a punch on with a teammate.
Yeah, and
it's fairly rare.
I mean, they could probably get Melksham to play his role because he's good with the punch, but May was a twin tower of that defence. So if there's going to be issues with him, who knows how he's going to feel when he comes back? Maybe he's going to think like, well, fuck this club. So I don't know. I really look at that side and think you should be cruising. Although there's a couple of teams like Carlton, I watched them against Essendon and they were frightening at times. That twin tower forward line of McKay and Curnow, it's very, very scary. Although again, I was watching that game and McKay took a dive when he got a little bit of pressure. The commentators talked about he put mayonnaise in the dive. That's it. They don't go on for 20 minutes about that. Now, a guy that's 100 kilos and 6'8" or whatever the fuck he is, got knocked over by someone half his size, but Ginnivan bends down to pick up the ball and he's drawn a free. Even though half the time when they show the replays, they go, well, no, actually that one was there. And even though the ones they missed, the AFL came and goes, yes, there was 3 of them there. But he's still the issue. Keep running that narrative.
And they will.
Anyway, last question. How do we lose to West Coast?
Oh, fuck. You're going to bring this up every week.
Not
and
me.
the answer is always going to be, oh, fuck. I have no idea.
I heard they got some players
Maybe
back.
it was a turning point internally about, are you fucking serious or what? Maybe it was a loss for good.
I heard it was when Pendlebury brought the players out on the ground. He said, this is our chance to get revenge. Treat this like a grand final.
Against West Coast?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that worked well.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it from us. We'll be back next week.
After the bye?
Yeah, we'll be back.
Do we know who we're playing after the bye? Did we do any research this week?
It's GWS, isn't it?
Is it?
I don't care.
I think we got 6 very winnable games coming up against bottom 8 sides. We used to be a bottom 8 side, but no longer.
North loses a danger game, doesn't it? They're on clear on bottom.
We don't play North England, do we?
We haven't played them once.
Have we?
North Melbourne.
Have we? No. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that'll be a danger game. No, but I actually think that this is the nervous time now. About you should on paper win the majority of these games against the lower 8 sides. I just hope that one of the things that Fly sets up for them is that he clearly gets them up for the big games. You've got to keep that momentum going for the lesser ones, and I think they will. I don't think they'll take a more of a lax attitude. I'd like to think that that'd be the case. I just hope that they don't go in too relaxed, thinking, fuck, we're good now. Let's just go out and win.
I always look at those shit games, and particularly when they're against sides, high profile sides. So like a West Coast, I'll use as an example. I always look at that and just say, this team's going to be up one day. Fucking scar them for life. So when they're up, they will remember you scarred them for life, and you'll have a psychological edge against them. And that's what we should have done to them when we played them earlier in the year. It should have just been like, let's not just win this, but scar them. Break this fucking side.
Well, everyone else is.
Well, yeah. So that actually frustrates me that we historically tend to dip away against teams who are in the bottom 4, bottom 6. Under Buckley we did it constantly. We'd beat a good side, then we'd lose to a shit side. But even prior to that, under Malthouse, it was like you'd be chugging away, going, it's all going well, and then they'd lose some games to some shit. I remember in 2006, we lost to Essendon, which cost us the top 4 spot. And Essendon was like bottom at that time. So, we historically do it. Anyway, that's it from us. We'll see you missed it.
In 2 weeks.
Later.
Next week. Next week.
Next week.
Next
Later.
week. We'll see you next week. Later.